What's up, everybody? So I've been playing Halo Campaign Evolved and, well, I like it. Actually, I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I know that's not really the popular thing to say these days, but I also haven't really been playing it as a critical reviewer. Rather, I've just been running through it with co-op mode with a couple of other people, and I don't know what to tell you, we're having fun. I've seen the complaints that other people have. I think many of them are justified, others might be a bit of a reach. A Halo reach, if you will. But no, it's been a fun experience. I don't know what to say, especially because I haven't really paid for it since we had like 3 months of Game Pass or whatever that hasn't run out yet, so I played Halo and didn't have to pay anything additional. Now, the way that we've been running through this title is my friend has been playing it on his PlayStation 5. I've been actually playing it on my Legion Go, but that's through streaming it using Moonlight and Apollo, so the game is actually running on my 5070 Ti, but it's outputting on my Legion Go at 1600p, and I think the frame rate is nestled right around 100 frames per second, although I am using the built-in game's frame generation. Without the frame generation, it's just around like 58 to 65 frames per second, depending on what's going on. Now, the third individual that's playing with us is my cousin. My cousin does not have a PC. I was actually going to let him borrow my Xbox Series X to play the game, but I figured instead, since I was going to let him borrow a piece of hardware anyway, I'd let him use the Xbox Ally X. Mainly because I wanted to see how like a neutral, casual, non-typical PC gamer felt when they played this game, and whether or not they viewed the Xbox Ally X experience as inferior. Now, so far, when we've played through this game, half the time he's been actually at my house, so we're just kind of both hanging out together, each using an old handheld to play co-op together. The guy with the PS5 is at his place, so it's like the three of us playing online, but two of us are sitting together. And outside of the initial tweaking, what I figured out was the optimal settings for the game on the Xbox Ally X. It's almost entirely been in his hands. Every like hour or so, I'd be like, yo, like, what do you think of the experience so far? And he's like, yeah, it feels really good. And then after like another hour, I'd be like, yo, is it like still running very well? And he's like, dude, like, stop asking me, just let me freaking play the game. And I'm like, oh, okay, you don't understand. Like, I gotta tell people online. Anyway, so I realized that if he was to dock this thing, I could actually test out the AutoSR feature on it as well. And I gotta say, while it's not perfect, I was very surprised by the results. I've already tested out AutoSR on a few games before, and I already think it massively improves the experience of the Ally X when you're playing docked. And I do genuinely believe that if the Ally X was your only gaming PC that you used, and you just had a dock sitting under your TV, so sometimes you play handheld, sometimes you play it on the TV, while a mini PC or a Steam machine, for example, would make that TV experience better than the Xbox Ally X does. With AutoSR enabled on the Xbox Ally X, the trade-off is not nearly as bad as it could be. In fact, given the price points of the Xbox Ally X and the Steam machine, I might actually consider doing a head-to-head video in the future to see which one would be a better buy, with all of the pros and cons. Obviously, with one of them more favoring the handheld and the other one favoring the docked experience. But that's a discussion for a later video. For now, I want to break down the settings that I'm using to run Halo on the Xbox Ally X, and I'm initially going to set everything up without AutoSR, and then we're going to apply it at the end, just so you can kind of see what we're building off of. So first things first, when you're playing Halo on PC, you have to set the display resolution that you want in the game for the actual system before jumping into it. I don't know why they have it set up like that. There's no like exclusive full screen experience feature. They only have the borderless window, and that will display whatever resolution you have set for your system. Now, whenever I play anything handheld, I value battery life more than anything else, so I typically start at the lowest resolutions, and I almost always play on there. So for me, the Xbox Ally X is more often than not a 720p device. Admittedly, the battery life on this thing is pretty good. You could go up to 1080p, but on a 7-inch screen, I hardly notice the difference sometimes, to be honest. Now, granted, throughout this video, I am running the footage docked. It's going through a capture card and outputting on my PC. That might have minor effects on the display, maybe a little bit of screen tearing, some grainy stuff here and there, but I still think this is a better way to show you the experience rather than recording it off of a screen. Anyway, so since it's docked, it's running at 4K, I changed the resolution here to 720p. My TV does cap off at 60 frames per second. I'm not trying to push it any further than that. I don't usually go higher than 60 frames per second unless I'm playing in handheld, to be honest. And then over in the AutoSR settings, you have the AutoSR for Xbox. You can have a switch to turn it on and off. I like to keep it on because then I get a notification immediately that it's going to be applied anytime I'm opening a game at 720p, but you can turn that off if you don't want to mess around with it. I also do like to have the indicator that shows a symbol in the top left corner about whether or not it's applied. If that gets distracting for people as they're playing in dock, they can always turn that off. And then some new settings that I don't believe I noticed before, at least I think they're new, but I just haven't noticed them. The AutoSR notifications, I think that one was there, but I don't believe the split screen AutoSR was there before. I think AutoSR used to fail if you were playing a game in split screen. This should mitigate it, but I haven't tried it yet. And then there's also an option at the bottom for your maximum display resolution. I haven't tested this out yet, but from my understanding, if you open up a game, it'll automatically run the game back down to 720p so you can turn AutoSR on. So like if my Ally X is docked and it's set to 4K, by having that turned on, theoretically, if I booted up a game, it'll automatically bring it down to 720p so that it can turn on AutoSR. I think these are all just very good features to make the experience auto, right? It's AutoSR after all. The less tinkering you have to do, the better. But yeah, let's boot up the game now. Let's see how everything looks. Just remember, I have AutoSR turned off right now. We're just going based off of the raw 720p Halo experience. I'm going to limit the frame rate to 60 frames per second because that's all my TV outputs. The game is set to borderless full screen. Initially, when I booted it up, it had all the defaults set to very low. I changed the preset to low instead. I'm guessing if you're going to 1080p, you should put it on very low, and if you're at 720p, you can move up to low, so it just kind of depends on whether you value resolution or all this other stuff instead. But yeah, low worked fine for me. Honestly, I think if you're using frame generation, you might be able to move up to medium as well, but that's whatever. I'm keeping it on low for now. And then in addition to that, I turned off screen shake and motion blur. Now down in the advanced settings, that's when it gets kind of experimental. For upscaling, this game has the options to go between TSR and FSR. Other videos have kind of shown the difference in results between the two of them. I think TSR is actually yielding a better picture in this game. It comes out a little bit grainier when you're playing with FSR. In handheld mode, that's not terrible. On the TV, it's a bit more distracting. But that being said, using FSR allows frame generation in this game, and I actually think the frame generation that's built into this title is pretty good. I know many will find that to be a blasphemous sentence to utter, but when I turn frame generation on, it just feels a lot smoother, and I don't really feel a relevant amount of input lag. Frame generation at a locked 60 frames per second seems to be more enjoyable than no frame generation and hovering between 40 and 45 frames per second. But for now, we'll start it off just with TSR running at 720p, TSR set to medium, which basically means that it's taking the 720p resolution, it's cutting it in half, so you're actually running the game at 360p, and then the TSR and your TV and everything is making it output at 720p. Anyway, so let's jump into the Silent Cartographer. I like that level because it has sand, it has a beach, there's some foliage, and it has bright and sunny spots as well as shaded areas. Obviously, over at the top of the screen, you can get a look at the frames per second. I do have this set to the highest TDP as well, since it's docked. Now already, if you're playing this handheld and you're on a small screen, this 720p doesn't look bad. I think this is a very beautiful game and it doesn't look terrible on this screen. The frames per second are hovering between 35 and 45 frames per second. You could lock it at 30 frames per second if you wanted to, but depending on what frame rate you enjoy, this is not unplayable by any means. That being said, I think we can make it better. Instead of TSR, I'm going to turn on FSR and I'm also going to turn on frame generation. Now you can see the screen did get a bit grainier like I mentioned earlier, but I have a stable 60 frames per second, and even though I'm using frame generation, it still feels really good. Like frame generation can be bad, but when a game is designed around the frame generation, I don't know, it feels kind of natural. Especially because this is not a competitive online first-person shooter, you're going through a campaign. Now there is an added benefit since we are using frame generation, we actually do not need to drop the resolution to 50%. Right, we were mainly doing that for the frame rate. Instead, we can move it up to high. Now we're still locked at that 60 frames per second and we're not nearly as grainy. Still not perfect, don't get me wrong, but I mean if you're playing this on handheld, it's gonna look great. I know this because I played it like this on handheld. And actually when I was playing on handheld, the frame rate was even higher because the screen went up to 120 frames per second. But anyway, we'll use this as a baseline and now we'll jump into the actual AutoSR portion of this. When you open up the game bar and you turn on AutoSR, you'll be prompted to restart the game so it actually takes into effect. And then you'll see as soon as you boot the game up, it'll tell you AutoSR is enabled. And you'll even see the indicator in the top left corner, although it's kind of hidden behind that APU. Now it's the exact same settings that we left off of, but the game is bringing it up now. It's automatically upscaled it. It's still hitting that 60 frames per second marker, and it looks noticeably better to me at least. I don't know if you guys are seeing it on the screen that you're looking at, but immediately it looks better. In fact, you can actually go to the settings now and turn off the upscaling for FSR. Keep frame generation on and then just switch it to native. This will get rid of the graininess. You'll be hovering around 60 frames per second. Yeah, it looks pretty good. This is an objectively good docked experience. I think so anyway. And look, we can even do the whole thing where we turn AutoSR on and off while you're staring at the screen and see how it differs. Look at that. You can see the difference as I turn AutoSR on and off. And here I'll move over to another area. You can kind of see it in the background too, without me even having to like turn the game back on to the regular mode. And like over here now, if you don't like frame generation, you can turn it off. You'll be sitting around 40 frames per second. The whole AutoSR thing is upscaling it to 4K. It looks pretty good. We'll even do the TSR thing, drop it back down to medium settings so that it brings the frames per second up a little bit higher. We'll turn AutoSR on and off a little bit so you can see the difference in the visuals in the background, and it's showing a pretty big improvement. Like, it looks very crisp, noticeably better whenever you turn it on. And I mean, obviously it's not going to look as good as native 4K, but I mean, here, let's turn on native 4K and see how it runs when you actually put on 4K. This is objectively beautiful, except it's running at 10 frames per second now. So yeah, even at 1440p. You get to 1080p, this is actually not too terrible. You're still under 30 frames per second. I wouldn't play it like this. So this is, again, natively with no upscaling, bringing it down to 1600 by 900. This is probably the best it's going to look natively if you're okay with playing at 30 frames per second. But it's like as soon as you drop it back down to 720p, immediately you notice the improvement on the screen. Because AutoSR, as soon as it detects that 720p, it's like, oh, time to bump it up. But yeah, the way that I would play this is I would put FSR on, I would turn it on to native, and I would turn on frame generation. You get 60 frames per second, and it's not going to look exactly like 4K, but I don't know, this looks pretty good. Actually, it looks really good. I don't know what to tell you. And then again, we'll do the whole thing where I turn it off and on a little bit more just so you can see the difference. But there it is right there in the background. You spot it like before I even start zooming in. If I had to play Halo docked and my only choice was the Xbox Ally X and I was throwing it on the TV and I was turned on AutoSR with these settings set up, I would say this is objectively a very good Halo Campaign Evolved experience. Now, it could be better, obviously. Like if you're playing this on the Steam machine and you have the same settings turned on, including frame generation, playing it on a 60 frames per second TV, from a resolution standpoint, the visuals should be pretty comparable. Obviously, the big difference in this case, if you're using the Steam machine, is you'll be able to bump up those low quality presets up to medium. So it should be an all-around better experience if you're playing it on the Steam machine. But again, that Steam machine is a much stronger device that's meant for docked play in comparison to a handheld that you're docking and using this feature to upscale everything to make it look almost as good as a stronger budget PC. Now, unfortunately, I do not have this game on my Steam machine, so I can't show you footage of it. But what I can do instead is run around on my desktop, playing things natively, or even using DLSS. And like, obviously, this is going to look much better. But this is with playing it on a device that would cost more than 3 times as much as the Xbox Ally X does. Well, in today's market anyway. I didn't buy it for that much. And the sad thing is, I only bought it a year ago. But yeah, look, AutoSR is not going to make it look as good as a 5070 Ti would, but it absolutely increases the value of the Xbox Ally X, in my opinion, when it comes to docked gaming. The cool thing will be, and I hope this happens very soon, is seeing AutoSR automatically implemented to make your 720p games look like 1080p on handheld. I already use AMD's RSR quite a bit on all of my handhelds to bring up the visuals, and it does actually make a massive difference. But the application of AutoSR would be so much smoother, easier to use, and just having a chip in the background taking care of all of that by just flicking a switch would be way better than having to tinker. But this continues to be one of the best features of the Xbox Ally X, in my opinion. And considering how much money you have to spend to get a comparable or even a more powerful device with a better screen, I think there's so much value here that many people take for granted, especially in the pre-owned market. Because I think if you're able to grab one of these for $800 or $900 especially, I don't think there's anything else in that same price range that offers a similar value. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little display of Halo Campaign Evolved on the Xbox Ally X, a handheld device that I think is actually pretty good when it's docked. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.